While seeking a place to rest, I discovered the incredible bond of 3 remarkable Apache widows. Driving through the rugged terrain of the Arizona desert, Jack Thompson felt the sweat trickle down his back, the heat radiating from the asphalt mirroring the relentless pressures bearing down on him. As a social worker and a devoted single father, the chaos of raising his 2 young children gnawed at him, like a permanent thorn lodged beneath his skin. The respite from their demands hung just out of reach, and with each winding mile, Jack's mind wrestled with the weight of his responsibilities. When he stumbled upon a small Apache community, porches adorned with vibrant pottery and children laughing in the dust, hope fluttered within him briefly before it was snatched away. The scene seemed like a mirage, a sanctuary from his aching solitude and the bitter taste of defeat that lingered in his mouth. Jack found himself parking his car, curiosity winning over the urge to flee back to familiar chaos. Eleanor, Mabel, and Rosa greeted him with warmth and open hearts, but their warmth contrasted starkly with the chilly discomfort swelling inside him. While they welcomed him as a guest, Jack felt like an intruder, his presence a potential burden. The shared stories of loss and struggle weighed heavily on his conscience. It gnawed at him to acknowledge that in their sadness lay a deep-seated resolve, one he desperately yearned to emulate but feared to embrace. "That's a beautiful piece of art," Jack remarked as he caught Mabel's eye, a well of emotions swirling within her as she spoke of her work silenced by grief. Yet, his professional instinct kicked in, sparking an internal debate. Was this the right kind of distraction? This gathering felt restorative, but it also fanned the flames of his gnawing unease. He could feel the lines of his responsibility blurring in the presence of these widows, women who bore the trials of their past like a badge. Could he, a mere visitor, contribute without evoking deeper wounds? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Rosa's words punched through the air like a brewing storm as she spoke of the corporation exploiting their land, igniting a fire within him. He felt drawn into their lives, yet the fear of losing his own credibility and the tenuous stability of his job held him back from committing fully. The echoes of his own children's laughter seemed distant now, underscoring how far removed he was from that peaceful domesticity. Torn between the moral urgency thrust upon him and yielding to the safety and comfort of his life back home, Jack hesitated. What kind of example would he set for his children if he raised his voice against the very systems he often lamented? The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, a sinister reminder of the choices before him. Eleanor's steady gaze pierced his indecision, reflecting the stories of strength and suffering of generations past. "Will you stand with us?" Her voice quivered, each word laced with centuries of resolve. Jack's breath hitched, his heart raced as he hovered at this precipice, the voices of the women weaving an unbreakable thread around his conscience that tugged him deeper into their fight. Would he embody the strength he sought to uplift? Or would he back away, cloaked in the safety of his professional detachment? The answer lay in the crumbling distance between his obligations and the allure of a cause greater than himself. Unease coiled around him as he grappled with the urgent question, what realm of justice and redemption awaited him if he chose to navigate this morally treacherous terrain? The evening sunlight painted the sky in shades of amber and violet, but inside Jack's mind, darkness loomed. His perception of the world had shifted in the short span of mere hours. Here he was, standing amidst the power of history and resilience, grappling with his identity as a social worker and the unrelenting responsibilities of fatherhood. The very essence of who he thought he was began to fracture with each question posed by the Apache women. "Will you stand with us?" Eleanor's question lingered, an echo in the confines of his thoughts as he paced the community's dusty ground. The stakes of his response began spiraling in multiple directions. If he joined them in their fight for justice, would he be abandoning his children? In his mind, he could hear their laughter, a siren call pulling him back to the safety of familiar chaos. Yet, in this moment, the cause he could champion felt far more potent and stirring than the mundane cycle of daily life. Jack stood still, calculating his options. If he chose the path of advocacy, how would he balance his work, his time with his children, and this newfound purpose? The fear of failure, echoing memories of his own childhood and witnessing his own parents' struggles, gnawed at him fiercely. He had spent his career socializing and problem-solving, navigating bureaucracies that often felt unsolvable. But here, in this rare confrontation with human resilience, he sensed a raw authenticity that schools and offices couldn't teach. What if I could learn to channel my skills towards something meaningful? The thought ignited a flicker in Jack's chest. He realized he had been yearning for that purpose, one that would attest to the depths of his character while serving others. With a deep breath, he began to mentally map out the contours of this potential new direction. He could gather resources, expertise on legal matters and environmental protections, to support the Apache women. It would be an arduous journey, but the idea of standing in solidarity with their plight filled him with ghostly echoes of hope and courage. But doubts battered at the edges of his resolve. Would the community trust him? His identity as an outsider, a transient visitor on their sacred land, loomed larger. Conversations with them hinted at anger and scars buried beneath their chilly reception. What if their stories sung of rejection rather than acceptance? Leaning into vulnerability with an unsteady foundation felt perilous. A rush of uncertainty pulled him to the surface as he turned on his heels toward the women. "Can you teach me? I want to help you fight." The words spilling forth like a dam burst resonated with a sense of urgency. Mabel's brow furrowed, her gaze filled with assessing wisdom. "It's not easy. Our fight has cost us dearly. You must know what you're getting into." Jack's heart thundered, and he grappled with, but was no longer paralyzed by fear. "I want to learn. I want to make a difference not just for you but in myself." The daylight faded around them, and the tension hung heavy as if the universe held its breath. He could feel the weight of this decision pulling him into an abyss of the unknown, teetering between what could be a transformative alliance and the risk of further personal loss. Eleanor shifted beside him, a sigh escaping her lips. "Then you must understand our stories. We carry them like treasures, and they are intertwined with your own." With those words mingling in the thickening air, Jack felt the ground he stood on tremble under his convictions. Though he ventured deeper into a complicated battleground with no clear end, something unshackled within him, the possibility to grow, to align his professional path with his morals. As Jack contemplated his next move, the crackle of impending discovery stirred in the silence around him. Just as he was beginning to find his footing, an unexpected figure emerged from the shadows, a representative from the corporation, seemingly threatening to unearth the very foundations he was starting to build. Jack felt the weight of inevitability crash down upon him as he prepared to face whatever lay ahead, for better or worse. The moment of truth was no longer a distant prospect. It approached him with the force of a gathering storm. The figure stepping from the shadows was tall and imposing, draped in a suit that reflected the polished arrogance of corporate power. Jack's pulse quickened as he recognized him. It was Timothy Graves, the senior vice president of the company, seeking to exploit the land the Apache women fought so fiercely to protect. Jack felt the breeze shift, carrying with it an unspoken tension that threatened to overwhelm him. "Ah, Jack," Graves began, his voice smooth yet laced with disdain. "It seems you've decided to involve yourself in matters far beyond your understanding. A shame, really. You could have left this," he gestured to the dusty ground beneath them, "to those who truly know how to handle it." Jack clenched his jaw. Confrontation had never been his strong suit, but each word felt like a trigger, echoing an urgency that came from the depths of his desire to stand with the Apache women. This was the moment he'd awakened for. The moment he had told himself he could embrace the fight. "Your corporation is about to make a grave mistake, Graves," Jack replied, trying to channel the conviction he felt in his heart. "You don't understand the strength of this community, nor the history you seek to erase." Graves leaned closer, the unease between them palpable. "Strength, history. You're romanticizing this, Jack. The world works on profit, not sentiment. These widows you've attached yourself to are mere obstacles in a business transaction, not the guardians of some forgotten past. Each word from Graves was a stab, and Jack stood at a crossroads within himself. Ever since he had approached the women, he'd struggled to balance his impulses against his instincts. But here, facing the embodiment of his fears, clarity began to wash over him. A sense of purpose crystallized that had been clouded by doubt just moments before. He took a breath, steadying his resolve. You're wrong. They possess a resilience and wisdom that go beyond any balance sheet. They fight to preserve what remains of their identity, their culture, and no number of dollars can buy that. Jack could see that Graves hadn't expected this level of defiance. For a moment, uncertainty flickered in his eyes before it was masked with condescension. Play the hero all you want, my friend. You'll find you can't win the hearts of people who are too tied to their nostalgia to understand progress. Your social work methods have little place here. With a faint, almost mocking smile, Graves added, I'd advise you to step back before you find yourself in over your head. At that moment, Jack knew that backing down wasn't an option. This wasn't just about advocacy. It was about confronting a hidden part of himself that had always been drawn to the underdog. He thought of Eleanor, Mabel, the bond he felt with the Apache women, and the legacy he desired to leave for his children. Then let's see how deep your pockets go against the heart, Jack said, his voice rising with conviction. You may have power, but you underestimate what real strength looks like. The tension crackled in the air as both men held each other's gaze. In that instance, Jack felt a surge of empowerment. He was no longer simply a visitor. He was a participant in this fight, a part of something bigger than himself. Remember this moment, Graves, he added, feeling the weight of the impending challenge bearing down on him. You can't put a price on history, and you're about to learn just how costly your arrogance can be. As Graves stepped back, a smirk reappeared on his face, but there was a flicker of doubt there too. Jack's mind raced with the possibilities, not only of the fight ahead, but also of the truth that was starting to settle in. He no longer saw himself as merely a social worker or a father trying to balance the obligations of life. He was becoming an advocate, the kind of man his children could look up to. However, as Graves departed, an uncomfortable realization washed over him. He would need allies and resources to take on such a formidable opponent. The Apache women were powerful, but could they trust him? Was he prepared to embrace the sacrifices necessary to forge this collaboration? With the horizon stretching out before him, each moment felt like stepping onto a battlefield without knowing how to wield his sword. He felt the tension swell within again, a reminder that the journey had only just begun. Just as he resolved to seek the women and solidify their alliance, the ground trembled beneath him, not from the weight of an impending storm, but from an unmistakably shifting foundation. He had ignited a fight for justice and purpose, but at what cost? And in that decisive moment, a new question arose in Jack's mind. How could he prepare not just for the oncoming confrontation, but for the transformation that awaited him as he stepped fully into this challenging new chapter of his life? Jack stood at the precipice of an uncharted journey, uncertainty swirling within him like the dust lifted by the afternoon wind. The encounter with Graves ignited a fire that made him question the depths of his resolve. He'd faced difficult clients, bureaucratic hurdles, and familial expectations, but this was entirely different. It wasn't just a professional battle. It was personal and steeped in a legacy he was beginning to comprehend. He aimed to find Eleanor, Mabel, and the others, the Apache women who inspired this newfound bravery. Their unwavering strength, even in sorrow, compelled him to act. Jack's mind raced through potential strategies to forge a meaningful connection and gain their trust. As he drove toward the modest structure the women called home, memories of their stories echoed in his mind. Tales of resilience, loss, and the unwavering bond they shared danced like fleeting shadows. Upon arrival, he hesitated, wrestling with doubt. Would they see him as an ally, or merely a passerby seeking to lend a helping hand without true understanding? He stepped out of his car, taking a moment to breathe in the sun-warmed air charged with the scent of sage, a staple in Apache tradition used for cleansing and protection. The familiar ritualistic aroma reminded him of the importance of the land and the people who nurtured it. The weight of his purpose pressed against him as he knocked on the worn wooden door, the sound reverberating in his chest like a drumbeat. Eleanor answered, her sharp gaze surveying him with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Jack, you came back," she said, inviting him inside. Mabel and another woman, whose name he had not yet learned, were gathered at the small table, rugged hands crafting beadwork that showcased their ancestral artistry. Jack hesitated at the threshold. "I need to talk about Graves and his plans," he began, feeling the tension grip his stomach. Eleanor's expression hardened. "You're meddling in matters best left alone. We fought this battle long before you arrived, and will continue to do so. What makes you think you can help?" Jack felt the challenge seep into the room, a test of his intentions. "I want to support you, to stand alongside you. I've seen what's at stake, and I refuse to let it happen without a fight." The others exchanged glances, skepticism filling the air. Jack's determination transformed into an unyielding need to prove himself worthy of their trust. He took a seat at the table, one that felt both tentative and resolute. "I've been misled in my career before, treated as just a social worker, a title that, in this case, means little. But I want to learn from you. You are the warriors in this fight. I'm just here to help." Mabel spoke, her voice steady yet gentle. "Help comes in many forms, Jack. We've seen good intentions twist before. What will it take for us to trust you?" His mind raced with the reality of what lay ahead. Could he genuinely embrace this collaborative effort to protect the land? Would they understand the struggles he endured? "Maybe it starts here," he replied, pointing to the beadwork spread out before them. "Teach me. Let me understand your culture, your world. Show me how to be an effective ally." The air shifted, the women's gazes softening. Their trust would not be bargained but earned, one small step at a time. They began to share the stories behind their craft, the symbolism, the traditions woven into every bead. Jack listened intently, absorbing the intricacies that shaped their identity and community. But with every passing story came a realization that the connection he sought extended far beyond the immediate confrontation with Graves. It entwined with understanding the deeper struggles, embracing vulnerability, and acknowledging his own insecurities. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the window, Jack made a silent vow to embrace his journey. He would not only stand with the Apache women, but evolve through the process. The deeper he dove into their culture, the more he realized the magnitude of his ignorance and the strength that lay within that realization. And just as Jack began to feel this burgeoning alliance take root, a haunting question tickled the edges of his consciousness. What sacrifices would he have to make to be part of their struggle, and could he face the sacrifices that would translate into true change? The weight of uncertainty settled in his chest, reminding him of the battles that lay ahead. The very foundations of his life would be tested, and unknown challenges loomed on the horizon, waiting to be faced. Jack's commitment to the Apache women deepened with every shared story, yet an undercurrent of apprehension threaded through his thoughts. He felt like a ship lost in an unfamiliar harbor, navigating by stars he had yet to understand. Every bead they threaded carried a history, each piece an indelible link to the land that sustained them. Jack recognized that these were more than mere crafts. They were vessels of culture, narrating struggles he had only begun to fathom. That evening, as they sat in the dim light of the approaching dusk, Jack turned the beads thoughtfully in his fingers. Each time he looked up, Eleanor's gaze scrutinized him, a silent assessment that both inspired and unnerved him. "What do these beads mean to you?" he asked, aware that he was probing into a personal territory. Eleanor set down her work, folding her hands over the small pile before her. "Each one tells a story," she said, her voice steady. "The colors reflect our history, and the symbols connect us to the land that we protect. They are reminders of who we are and of the trials we've endured. Some are symbols of mourning, others speak of resilience." Jack's heart raced as he absorbed her words. It was more than just fighting against Graves. It was about a rich tapestry of collective memories, a consciousness that transcended their present struggles. He wrestled with his place in this narrative. "How can I help protect this?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper, laden with urgency. Mabel interjected, "By understanding that our fight isn't just yours to join, it's ours to share. You want to help, but this path asks you to stay, to listen, and to sacrifice your own needs for the greater good." Her words hit Jack like a physical blow. He felt the swell of commitment battling against the ricochet of self-doubt. Mabel was challenging him to reflect deeper on what it meant to be an ally. "I'm willing to learn and contribute," he assured them, his anxiety compressing into a singular resolve. But what does sacrifice look like? Many things, Eleanor said. Your time, your comfort, and maybe even your career. You are stepping into a fight where we have already lost so much. Are you prepared for that? As silence crystallized around the table, the weight of that question plunged into Jack's consciousness, revealing shadows lurking beneath his previous intentions. His desire to be a savior began to fracture, exposing the greater truths of partnership and shared experience. What could he really contribute if he remained largely ignorant of their lived realities? As it sank in, Jack felt a strange liberation. It dawned on him that to truly be an ally, he needed to be introspective and honest, dismantling the very expectations he had set for himself. What if part of my sacrifice is letting go of some of my preconceived notions, or even my role as a helper? Eleanor nodded, pulling out more beads. That is a good start. Vulnerability is a form of strength here, Jack. We must all be prepared to put aside our egos to join in the fight. Their conversation flowed seamlessly, shifting from beadwork to the stories that inspired their symbolism. With every narrative shared, of courage, hardship, and generational healing, Jack leaned into their lives, absorbing their essence like a parched plant seeking rain. Diving into the depths of this collaborative relationship stirred something within him. It ignited an unfamiliar ambition not only to protect, but to transform himself and his understanding of service. Yet, in that moment of clarity, uncertainty lingered as a specter. What challenges awaited him beyond this newfound alliance? What repercussions would emerge if he fully embraced the fight alongside them, risking his professional standing? As he contemplated the path ahead, a shadow crossed his conscience. He realized the stakes were far higher than he initially presumed. A sudden knock interrupted his thoughts. The door swung open, revealing an unexpected figure, a man cloaked in an air of intimidation. It was Graves. The time had come to confront the very threat they had discussed, and the stakes were much higher than Jack had prepared for. Would he stand firm in his newfound convictions, or would fear pull him back into the shadows? Graves stepped inside, his presence altering the atmosphere instantly. The dim light refracted off the shards of emotion swirling within Jack. Anxiety, resolve, and a flicker of anger. What was intended to be an evening of quiet contemplation and connection had now morphed into an impending storm. "Jack," Graves drawled, his voice smooth yet cut with a sinister edge. "I see you've found new company." He gestured dismissively at the women, barely acknowledging their presence. "Seems you've joined the wrong fight." Jack's heart raced as adrenaline drowned out his previous contemplative state. What was it about Graves that unnerved him so? The man wore his privilege like armor, easily deflecting the weights of understanding and compassion. "This is not a fight you can dictate," Jack asserted, his voice steadier than he felt as he stood. The air thickened with a raging current of conflict. Eleanor and Mabel exchanged apprehensive glances, sensing the tension. Jack's desire to protect them began spurning the urgency to confront Graves directly. "It's not yours to control. We're fighting for a right that belongs to the Apache people," he managed, surprising himself with the assertiveness emerging from his core. Graves' lip curled, his swagger unfazed. "Oh, Jack, you're playing at a game you don't fully understand. They've lost everything. What makes you think you can protect them?" His words were sharp, dripping with condescension that ignited Jack's fury. "But I can learn," Jack retorted, this time passion fueling his resolve. "Learning means risking missteps, but it also means growth. You have no idea of the worth these stories hold." Inflection found purchase in his voice, hinting at a newfound maturity that buoyed him above the daggers Graves threw his way. For a moment, the air hung heavy with tension, Jack standing firm as Graves seemed to weigh the escalation of this confrontation. He sensed an unsettling amusement in Graves' gaze, as if playing a puppet master. "You think you can gain their trust? Their loyalty?" Graves leaned in closer, the darkness of his intentions pushing against Jack's hope. "Loyalty is earned through understanding, not intimidation," Jack countered, feeling a surge of determination. "You may have the means, but that does not give you the right to impose fear." Graves straightened, his demeanor shifting in an instant, suddenly lethal. "Fear is a tool, Jack. When you walk away from this, remember, it's the only way to keep control." With that, he turned to leave, but not before delivering a final taunt. Don't be surprised when this all blows up in your face. You'll face the same realities as they do. Jack clenched his fists, resisted the urge to scream after him. The confrontation served as both a challenge and a catalyst, igniting a stark clarity in Jack's mind. The courage Eleanor and Mabel had shown in sharing their lives and heritage was precisely what he needed to tap into. The threat of Graves would not tether him to despair. It would propel him forward into action. "Are you okay?" Mabel's voice broke through Jack's seething thoughts. The warmth of genuine concern wrapped around him like a blanket, a stark contrast to the cold lines of intimidation Graves had carved into the space. "I will be, but I need to think," Jack replied, feeling the need for introspection shallow but necessary. He had entered this battle unprepared, unwilling to wade through the depths of what he stood to lose, not just for himself, but for the Apache women who had embraced him into their story. As Jack paced the room, the weight of responsibility began to settle on his shoulders. This was no longer solely about him. He had to strategize, not with the emotions of a helper, but with the keen intellect of a fighter. Was his understanding of sacrifice strong enough to withstand the coming storm? The threat of Graves loomed large, yet beneath that shadow lay the possibility of solidarity, of strength drawn from vulnerability. Would he dare confront this man again? In that moment, the path forward crystallized. To truly be an ally, he needed to prepare himself for the battles ahead, not just externally, but within his own soul. Determined, Jack stepped to the window and peered into the inky night, a flicker of steely resolve igniting in his chest. What awaited him tomorrow? Would he muster the strength to follow through with his commitment? Or would fear still linger in his heart, chaining him to the shadows? The next morning could pivot everything. He would demand more from himself, more than he ever had before. The future was heavy with uncertainty, but clarity surged within him, challenging him to reclaim his agency for a fight that stretched far beyond the surface. Morning light filtered through the window, casting sharp beams across Jack's bewildered thoughts. He stared at the fragments of his past decisions littered around him. They whispered doubts that clawed at his resolve, but the confrontation with Graves had ignited a fierceness within him. Today would not be a day of retreat. As he sat at the small table, Jack scribbled notes, the ink flowing like his thoughts, catching the scattered fears and ambitions in a net of clarity. He penned down the stories he had learned from Eleanor and Mabel, weaving them into a map, one that would lead him to confront not only Graves but his own limitations. Every moment spent with them had peeled back layers of his ignorance, revealing a raw need for understanding and action. "History has teeth, and I need to learn to bite back," he murmured to himself, his grip tightening around the pen. There was more to Eleanor and Mabel than he had perceived. Their resilience didn't stem solely from their experiences. It was shaped by an unyielding bond forged through shared loss, laughter, and unspoken pain. They had dismissed their suffering not as a weakness but as a source of power. Jack needed that strength. Impulse surged through him. "I need to talk to them again," he decided, a plan forming. He envisioned an afternoon of storytelling where he would ask deeper questions about their pasts, unraveling the threads of their lives into a richer tapestry. But he would need to prepare himself. Every question could expose his own vulnerabilities, revealing a novice in a delicate realm of history that was not his own. That anxiety didn't deter him. Instead, it acted as fuel, reminding him of Graves' chilling arrogance. To confront living histories, those who'd faced real horror, required respect and an unwavering commitment to not repeat the past. He had glimpsed the human toll of that struggle, and he now felt a burgeoning responsibility to bridge that divide, one story at a time. After breakfast, Jack set out towards the women's home, the cool air sharpening his focus. Each step felt like a vow. He would not approach the Apache experience as an outsider looking in, but rather as a participant willing to listen and learn. Encountering Graves again was inevitable. He recognized that the rising tide of his confidence also came with inevitable clashes. Reaching the modest structure where Eleanor and Mabel lived, a wave of apprehension washed over him. He could visualize the histories held within those walls. Sorrow, resilience, laughter. Layers deep within the women who had shaped Jack's understanding. "Jack!" Mabel greeted him with a warmth that broke the morning chill, and he felt the weight of his earlier doubts lift slightly. As they settled into their conversation, he pushed through barriers of polite conversation, striving for substance. What was it like to lose so much? He found himself asking, the question tumbling out with an earnestness he hadn't anticipated. The silence that followed wrapped around them like a cloak, urging more than surface-level responses. Eleanor's gaze held a deep well of memories before she replied. Loss is an echo. At first it rings with pain, but in time, it can become a song. Do you know what I mean? Jack nodded slowly, his heart pounding as he absorbed the depth of her words. To share their stories meant diving into a well of pain. Could he navigate that without losing himself? Would his presence be a source of healing or another weight to carry? The moment felt pivotal, like a precipice from which he could either leap or withdraw. They continued the dialogue, layering experience with understanding, and Jack felt pieces of himself reshuffle around a new truth. The deeper he delved, the more he sensed that to truly support them, he had to confront his own inheritance of bias and expectation. Each story they shared chipped away at his preconceptions, revealing the interconnected threads they shared despite the chasms that society had built. As the sky darkened, Jack left their home, charged with a nascent understanding, yet shadowed by self-doubt. He had learned of profound pain, yet where would it lead him? The thought of graves loomed, a specter ready to dismantle all newfound insights. Could he truly hold his ground in the face of such darkness? As he walked, a realization struck him. The moment of confrontation was nearing. Would he be ready to stand firm against Graves, to protect not just the Apache women, but the very understanding he had come to cherish? The journey wasn't just about being an ally, it was about unearthing his strength within and, ultimately, having the courage to face both a relentless antagonist and an unruly past. This battle would define him, but the stakes now felt higher than himself. It was a defining moment poised to either solidify a newfound identity or shatter it irreparably. The air crackled with anticipation. The horizon loomed heavy with decisive decisions waiting to be made. Jack's footsteps echoed on the pavement, a steady rhythm matching the thudding of his heart. He had spent hours with Eleanor and Mabel, but as the twilight deepened, he felt the weight of lingering questions and newfound resolve pressing down on him. The sun descended like it was reluctant to leave, casting a crooked silhouette of shadows that reminded him of how easily perspectives could warp. The stories Eleanor and Mabel shared weren't merely narratives, they were living meridians of grief and strength. Each tale left an imprint on his consciousness, awakening a fervent desire within him to engage deeper. His skin tingled with anticipation and nervous energy. He felt like a student staring at a vast text he had yet to comprehend. His thoughts turned once more to Graves. The man had a knack for dismissing empathy as weakness, and that arrogance infuriated Jack. What could he say to Graves that would carry the weight of these women's stories? How could he transform raw emotions into a formidable strength, ready to combat the cool disdain that Graves wore like armor? This confrontation was no longer simply about standing up for his newfound friends. It was about standing for the very essence of survival. As he neared his small apartment, he hesitated before entering. This space, once his sanctuary, now felt confining. The walls seemed to close in, heavy with his doubts and insecurities. He had transformed so much in these last few interactions. Retreating into this cocoon felt counterintuitive. Instead, he stalked the streets, the night enveloping him in solitude, but also sharpening his thoughts. Do I believe in myself enough? A question echoed in his mind, probing into the depths of his psyche. Looking to his left, he spied a small park, its benches empty and inviting. The night was alive with crickets and the rustle of leaves, a chorus to his contemplations. He took a seat, seeking not just physical rest, but mental clarity. Jack pulled out his notebook, flipping to a fresh page. Tonight, he would draft his manifesto, an argument forged from the heart of their stories. The ink scratched against the page like a hammer against metal, forging words that encapsulated not only the pain of loss, but the wealth of resilience that accompanied it. With each stroke, he reflected on Eleanor's metaphor of loss becoming a song. He realized that if he was to face Graves, he must carry that melody within him. His objective would be more than defense. It would be an assertion of identity steeped in the very histories he had come to respect. A mixture of passion and determination surged through him. It was not merely about claiming his ground, it was about daring to amplify the voices of those who had long been silenced. The streetlights flickered like stars, illuminating the contours of his path, one marred by fear but brightened by enlightenment. Each breath steadied him, transforming uncertainty into resolve. Tomorrow would not be just another day. It would mark the beginning of a confrontation with Graves. He would present his thoughts, backed by the strength of two indomitable women. The questions would be sharper, rooted in rich, painful realities rather than empty rhetoric. He pictured facing Graves, sharing the stories that were now his responsibility to uphold. As he closed his notebook, a quiet sense of rebellion ignited within him. He was no longer merely a spectator peering into history. He was an active participant, rising from the sidelines. Every nuance of pain that Eleanor and Mabel had shared wove into a larger narrative, and he was ready to articulate their truths. What he didn't know was whether Graves would dismiss him outright or engage. The uncertainty gripped him, but it was an exhilarating grip, one pulsing with possibility. The confrontation awaited him, brimming with potential outcomes, each one etched in the threads of the stories he was now honored to carry. Would it be a leap toward change, or would he stumble under the weight of confrontation? With every stride home, the scent of anticipated conflict hung in the air. He was ready to reclaim not only their narratives, but also his own place in this intricate tapestry. Tomorrow, he would face Graves, and nothing could erase the resolve that churned inside him. The dawn of a new battle was close, and Jack steeled himself for the struggle ahead, knowing this challenge would define him in ways he had yet to comprehend. Would he emerge victorious, or would he reveal the limits of his newfound identity? As the night deepened around him, he pondered what strengths he might still uncover within himself, strengths that could tip the scales in this impending confrontation. The morning arrived accompanied by the familiar scent of rain-soaked earth and a hint of citrus in the air. Jack awoke, still feeling the weight of the night's thoughts wrapping around him like an old, ill-fitting cloak. He rubbed his eyes, gazing at the gray light filtering through the blinds. Today wasn't just another day, it was a pivotal moment, a crossroads marking the intersection between his fear and this newfound determination. He dressed mechanically, his mind racing through the possible interactions with Graves. He pictured the man's piercing gaze, a fortress built from years of dismissing others. Jack had to dismantle that fortress, prying open its walls with the stories he now held, making them resonate until they found a crack deep enough to infiltrate Graves's icy demeanor. As he paced to the cafe near his office, he attempted to harness the nervous energy swirling within him. The chatter of customers and the sizzle of frying eggs transformed into an unintelligible hum in the background, amplifying his focus. He needed to be sharp, articulate, an embodiment of the words he had put to paper last night. The thoughts of Eleanor and Mabel echoed through his mind, guiding him. A few moments alone at the corner table, he could visualize Eleanor tired yet battle-ready, the calm strength of Mabel radiating reassurance. His dedication to them pushed him forward. Their stories deserved more than simple acknowledgement. Instead of ordering his usual coffee, he chose a strong espresso. He needed the jolt, a reminder that he was actively participating in life. Jack took the first sip, its bitterness swirling through him like the bracing winds of change. He invited the taste of the beverage to represent the confrontation ahead, the tension, the potent energy of his courage. After the caffeine coursed through him, he felt solidified, ready to confront his reservations head-on. Today wasn't merely about defending their narrative, it was the renovation of his own identity and his status in a world that often favored the indifferent. Hours passed, elongated and excruciating. Finally, the time to face Graves arrived. Jack stepped into the office building, careful not to let external appearances distract him. The familiar, sterile scent of cleaning fluid almost suffocated him. Each pulse of the clock on the wall echoed the thud of resolve in his heart. As he approached Graves' office, the walls felt like they were closing in again. Doubts crept in, whispering taunts of insignificance. But then he conjured Eleanor's voice, the richness of her experience ringing triumphantly in his ears. He had a purpose. With each step, he considered the perspective he wanted to present, determined to extend beyond mere defense. He would invite consequences, answer his own questions, and perhaps even confront the beliefs that had previously defined him. Today was not just a challenge, it was a breakthrough for both himself and those he represented. Jack rapped his knuckles against Graves' door, the sound resonating through his body like a heartbeat. "Come in," Graves barked from the other side. The short command seemed to strip away any remaining vestiges of his hesitance. Jack inhaled deeply, pushing open the door with purpose. As he entered, Graves looked up from his desk, his expression unreadable, a fortress of skepticism towering between them. The time had come to face the unyielding, Jack thought, steeling himself for the storm of confrontation. Would he shatter the walls, or would he find himself naively plunging into an abyss of familiar despair? Now, in this suspended moment, every doubt, every question, and every hope stood on the precipice. This was not just about the stories, it was about reclaiming his own voice, one clearly rooted in the shared struggles of others. He was terrified but ready. Would their strength seep into him, granting him the courage he needed to transcend the tension? The outcome of this encounter loomed large. Jack braced himself for the battle ahead as he took a tentative step closer to Graves, the man who symbolized everything he opposed. What awaited on the other side of this confrontation? Jack squared his shoulders and met Graves's steely gaze. "I'm here because the fight for the Apache women is about more than just their lands," he began, allowing the collected vigor of Eleanor and Mabel's stories to infuse his words. "It's about their identity, their history, things you cannot quantify in dollars and cents." Graves smirked, leaning back in his chair with a posture that reeked of dismissiveness. "And what do you comprehend about land and identity, Jack? When you boil it down, they're losing the battle against economic realities." He waved his hand dismissively as if shooing away an irritating fly. Jack felt the unmistakable surge of resolve cresting within him. "You might see them as mere obstacles, but those women, and their culture, are the foundation of their resistance. This isn't merely about land. It's a moral fight about protecting a legacy. Your concept of progress destroys that legacy." Graves's smirk faltered. There was a flicker of annoyance, perhaps even surprise, after Jack's unanticipated assertiveness. The tension hung heavy as they locked eyes, a visceral contest of wills playing out in the silence. "That's touching, Jack. But do you truly believe you can tackle these complex social issues without understanding the broader context?" Graves asked, his voice smooth yet laced with condescension. "Understanding comes from listening and learning," Jack shot back. "I've been doing that, not only with Eleanor and Mabel, but also within myself. Yes, I'm still progressing, but I'm willing to put in the work to support their fight." Graves leaned forward, cutting through Jack's newfound confidence with forceful words. "You'll lose your credibility, your career even in this endeavor. Do you think your children will applaud your activism, or resent the loss of a father who had the gall to fight for lost causes?" His words stung, pricking deeply at Jack's core. "They'll see me standing for what's right," Jack replied, his voice steady but tempered with the pang of doubt. "What uses my credibility if it's built on indifference? I want my children to witness strength, in both duty and compassion." "Sentimental drivel," Graves sneered. "The world doesn't operate on noble instincts. The systems you're trying to fight will squash your little rebellion. You think they'll let you hold some moral high ground?" A fire ignited in Jack, fueled by the ethos of the Apache women. He had spent enough time in self-examination to recognize that fear no longer held him captive. "Then I'll show them what true strength looks like," he said, the conviction in his voice sharpening like a blade. Graves' expression wavered, and Jack sensed he had pierced his carefully constructed facade. "You can't buy histories, and you certainly won't extinguish the fight for justice." The ensuing silence felt like the calm before a fierce storm. Jack took a deep breath, slicing through the palpable tension that seemed to encapsulate them. "You can opt to sidestep their fight, Graves, but I won't. I'll work alongside the Apache community to reinforce their claims and amplify their voices. You may profit from exploitation today, but know that tomorrow's reckoning will be shaped by those who refuse to cower." A moment of stillness enveloped them, transforming into an electric current thrumming through the air. Graves narrowed his eyes, studying Jack as if calculating his next move. "You really believe this will end well for you?" he said, the confidence in his tone wavering. "Yes," Jack asserted, an almost palpable calm overcoming him. "I refuse to hide behind apathy. If I fall, I'll do it while fighting for something that truly matters." For the first time, Jack witnessed a crack in Graves's armor. Doubt flickered in the corners of his eyes. You really think they trust you? He scoffed, trying to push back as the unease twisted the power dynamic. What makes you so special? Jack felt the weight of Eleanor's and Mabel's strength behind him. I may not be an Apache, but I've learned about trust through shared trauma and resilience. It's earned through honesty and a commitment to stand shoulder to shoulder, not through arrogance and blindsiding intimidation. This fight is about them, and I'm willing to listen. Suddenly, a shadow shifted over Graves's features as realization dawned. This encounter was sparking beyond a mere business conflict. Jack was determined to weave himself into the fabric of this struggle, ready to challenge norms and expectation. I hope you're prepared for the fallout, Graves responded, his tone cold and calculating. The moment you touch their cause, there will be consequences for you and your family. Jack nodded, feeling the gravity of that weight, but standing unyielding. Let it come. I'll bear whatever challenges arise if it means protecting their lives. Standing in solidarity might just change the tide, and that's a cost I'm willing to pay. With that declaration, Jack stepped out of the office, the finality of his choice ringing in his ears. The burdens of indecision had been uplifted. He had deliberately chosen his path and embraced the uncertainty ahead, propelled by purpose rather than fear. Graves may have held power at that moment, but Jack felt it shift under him, like tectonic plates realigning, that moment forever altering the landscape of his life. The world outside felt open, brimming with the possibilities of resilience and solidarity. Jack pulled out his phone, ready to call Eleanor and Mabel, eager to share his commitment to their fight. A triumphant optimism surged through him. In that instance, he recognized his personal growth. He had transcended mere sympathy and emerged as an active participant in the fight for justice. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Yet it was a path he would travel, emboldened by shared truths and boundless resilience. Jack felt a deep satisfaction settling over him, seamlessly intertwined with ambition. He had entered that office uncertain, but left stronger, his voice bolstered by an undeniable purpose. Stepping confidently into a future laden with opportunity, he reveled in the knowledge that he was no longer just a social worker striving for balance, but now an advocate ignited by the fire of change. Join Jack on this remarkable journey, showcasing the power of personal transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Make a difference. Let your voice be heard. Don't wait even one more second to share.